That's a sight I never thought I'd see. WWE considering taking a break. WWE possibly taking a break after WrestleMania. But with the current societal issues we are going through, it seems like for the first time ever, WWE could actually be going on a hiatus for a short period of time. And in my opinion, it couldn't have come at a better time for the company. Because WrestleMania is the time when, everything, big feuds end and new feuds are ready to get going, and the expectations are at an all-time high to see if the WWE could keep fans interested from WrestleMania, from the WrestleMania high until SummerSlam, because SummerSlam is obviously the next high. But the expectations of that slowly worn up, that used to be the expectation. But slowly but surely it wore away after year after year after year of WWE slowly falling into the same old shit. See, WWE knows that fans are going to be, fans are going to come back in droves for WrestleMania season, and they're going to stick around after WrestleMania. But I feel like WWE has not done anything to make sure they stick around, and instead expects them to stick around for a couple weeks or a couple months, and then go away again. So the ratings might jump up a little bit right after WrestleMania, but they'll slowly but surely go back to where they were before the road to WrestleMania began. The reason for this video is that if I was a part of WWE, not just now, but, not after WrestleMania, not just with WrestleMania now in the rear view, but before WrestleMania, I would have sat down with my coworkers and made a list of 10 of the top wrestlers in WWE that need a direction. Meaning, the 10 people that we need to know where we're going with at all times, because they are 10 of the most important people in the company. And the fact of the matter is, looking at the list of 10 names that I wrote down, I think I could make another list of 10 names of people, or maybe even at least 5 people that are on the WWE roster that deserve a direction that currently don't have one. But starting with the list that I do have, I would have Seth. I write Seth Rollins' name on a piece of paper. I write the people he has feuded with on one side, and the people he hasn't feuded with on the other, and say, okay, he's feuded with. He just finished a feud with Kevin Owens. We got we got a lot of length out of the feud. We got a lot of miles out of the feud. Where is Seth gonna go next? Okay. Well, there is one guy on Raw that Rollins has never feuded with, and that is the guy who just fought Randy Orton at WrestleMania in Edge. In my opinion, if Edge is back and is going to be competing on shows or for events that is not just WrestleMania, I would let Rollins feud with Edge. But I would not have the expectation there of a massive, major feud. What I mean by that is, I would not go for the same thing necessarily as what we did with Rollins and Kevin Owens, because it's not needed necessarily. What I would do is Edge and Rollins, but in the background I'd have Aleister Black being built up to be the next feud for Seth Rollins after Rollins is done with Edge. But the problem, the only problem is Aleister Black needs to be rebuilt, or at least built to the point of where he has some bit of momentum, because right now, he's just another guy on the roster. He is not capable of being looked at as a legitimate threat to one of the top stars in the company, when he should be. So maybe I would have Aleister park his tush next to Andrade and start a program with Andrade and Aleister Black focused on the United States title and capitalizing on the chemistry the two had down in NXT. Now we move to the next guy on the list, and that's Roman Reigns. Roman Reigns is by far the top star on SmackDown, and, because of his previous health issues, backed out of WrestleMania and likely backed out of a Universal title win against Goldberg. Now, some might say the likely spot for Roman is against Braun Strowman due to Roman being the champion, winning the Elimination Chamber and getting the shot against Goldberg. But the fact of the matter is Roman versus Braun really the best place to go for SmackDown on Fox? My answer is no. And the reason is because Roman Reigns should be used to help establish a new face. And then, Roman doesn't need to go right back in the Universal title picture, is what I'm saying. And Braun should not have somebody like Roman right away. You should give Braun the opportunity to be Universal Champ first, and then move into a feud with an established star. Because, it's like Kofi. Kofi started with, the likes of Dolph Ziggler and Kevin Owens, and then he moved to Brock Lesnar. He had the show me feuds to establish himself as a credible champion, and then he moved to a feud with a credible star. Braun needs to start with people on the upper mid-card, and then move to the people in the main event. As far as Roman, I think, why not Roman Reigns versus Shinsuke Nakamura? Why not have Roman Reigns against Sami Zayn's group just to try and establish either Shinsuke a little bit more or Cesaro a little bit more? Because then, hypothetically, if you use Roman to establish Shinsuke and Cesaro and Sami, yes, Braun has already feuded with those three guys, but you could also plug them in as a month feud for Braun if one of them beat Roman. If not, if you don't want to go that route, you can always go the route of, if you don't want to go that route, you can always go the route of having, you could always go the route of having, you know what, let's revisit Roman for a second, and let's move to Randy Orton. Because a point that I made earlier with Aleister Black going against Andrade to build him up to fight Seth Rollins, it could also be where Aleister Black is built up to fight Randy Orton. Because Randy Orton is an established star, and a proven heel. A proven heel to help, if Aleister Black fought Randy Orton, it would be a great opportunity to have Aleister Black prove himself against a main event level star. One feud I'm going to throw out there just because I don't know what WWE's trying to, thinking as far as the tag team division, but Morrison and Miz versus Heavy Machinery is the likely next step, in my opinion, to help capitalize on the building popularity of Otis from his feud with Dolph Ziggler over Mandy Rose. So that is the likely next step, in my opinion, for WWE. In that case. And just throwing it out there because it is, I don't know if WWE is going to do the usual superstar shakeup after WrestleMania, that comes after WrestleMania, but if they did, I would move Bobby Lashley over to SmackDown, and Lashley could be a capable competitor to have a short rivalry with Roman Reigns. Just to give a different person the opportunity to step into the ring with Roman Reigns. Another team I would move over to SmackDown, I would either let Heavy Machinery move over to SmackDown and Otis and Tucker move to Raw to give them a new, feel and a fresh identity, moving them over to a different brand, or I'd move New Day over to Raw, and I'd still move Heavy Machinery. I mentioned Edge already, as I would put Edge with Rollins. Drew McIntyre is WWE Champion now after a lackluster match with Brock Lesnar. Say what you will about WrestleMania. It was a good show. It was a special show. It was a unique show. But I would have given Cena and Bray Wyatt top billing with the Firefly Funhouse match as the main event, as opposed to McIntyre and Lesnar. Honestly, I would not expect Brock and McIntyre to revisit their feud right away. Maybe they would revisit their feud at SummerSlam, but before then, I don't see it happening. And in that case, I would let Drew McIntyre carry on a similar, I would have Drew McIntyre carry on sort of a I can't believe I'm here type thing, and I accomplished my dream. It took me 19 years to get here, and I'm going to give, a lucky few people the same opportunity I was afforded by the Royal Rumble. I'm going to give them the chance to see what they can do against the WWE Champion. And I would start with Riddick Moss. Riddick Moss had an unexpected ascension to the main roster, and I feel like has fallen to the background, but maybe he fell to the background because the current situation, but just as, when he was 24/7 champion, it seemed like he was right in the mix of some character development, and there's no reason to keep him off television if you have, like, he's starting character development and then you take him off TV. But I would not let Riddick Moss instantaneously get a match with Drew McIntyre. He'd have to earn it. So, Riddick Moss would appear. Then Truth would appear. Because I love our Truth. And then Ricochet would appear. And maybe Andrade. To set up a fatal 4-way for that episode of Raw. 4 people that never get a title opportunity. 4 fresh faces competing for the opportunity to fight Drew McIntyre. Riddick Moss would win and fight Drew McIntyre non-title in 2 weeks. 2 weeks after that match. Why 2 weeks? Because it would give us an opportunity to build up the match, to make it meaningful, to make it have more meaning than it would if it happened the next week. And to show this is the reason why we need to believe that Riddick Moss is here to stay, and it would give us an opportunity to have somebody like Riddick Moss, an unproven commodity, in the main event against a commodity that is still out to prove himself. McIntyre is nowhere close to proving himself yet, but much like Braun Strowman, for the first time actually in a while, WWE actually has 2 unproven commodities as world champions. And as I get disturbed by some stupid people driving past my house, honking their horns for no good reason, we go back to the video. But for the first time in a while, WWE has 2 unproven commodities as the top stars. And now, they need to be out to let everybody, let Braun Strowman and Drew McIntyre show that they belong there. And that's why I chose Riddick Moss, because Drew would show that he belongs by taking an unproven commodity and making it the match matter. As far as a long-term feud, I think that flows back to the likes of Edge and Randy Orton, maybe AJ Styles, guys like that. Guys that are already established stars that could help pull Drew up. Or, Rollins, guys like that. That could help pull Drew up to the top of the card. And eventually, Brock Lesnar. Braun Strowman's the same way as Drew McIntyre. I would let Braun have some show me feuds with unproven guys, or maybe a feud with a proven guy. Like maybe Braun Strowman comes out 1 week on SmackDown and says Kofi Kingston never got his opportunity, so Kofi, I want to give you your opportunity. And let Braun's first feud be with Kofi. Now you might ask, what happens with the New Day? Well, with Xavier still repairing, healing up from his injury, who really knows how long WWE is going to be away? I don't think it's going to be that long, but, who even knows if WWE is going to go on a break? But either way, I would let the New Day have a little bit of a reprieve as a tag team to give other teams the opportunity to stand tall, and I would give Kofi, Braun Strowman, and Big E, Sami Zayn. Meaning, Kofi would go for the world title, Big E would go for the IC. Why not? Give them the opportunity while Xavier heals, until Xavier's healthy, give them the opportunity to do something different. This is not their way of breaking up, this is their way of doing something different. After Kofi, I'd have Braun move to maybe Daniel Bryan and Drew Gulak. After that, Roman Reigns. After that, Roman Reigns. But in the feud with with Daniel Bryan and Drew Gulak, I would have Drew show what he can do and why he is going to get the Daniel Bryan stamp of approval if Daniel is actually going to retire once his contract is up. As far as the New Day, well, if Big E's feuding with if Big E's feuding with Sammy, and once Xavier comes back, you could have Sammy's group, Sammy, Cesaro, and Shinsuke Nakamura, in a 6-man feud with the New Day. Again, to give New Day something different. Andrade, I already talked about with Aleister Black, but with his feud with Aleister Black and them showing exactly what they can do and how gifted they are in the ring, they can not only elevate the United States title, but also elevate each other to where in a year you could be seeing Andrade Aleister Black instead of for the United States title, for the world title. In my opinion, that's exactly what should happen. Brock Lesnar, we're probably not going to see for a little bit, I would guess, but he's still one of the more important people in WWE, and you need to know where you're going with Brock, or what's next for Brock Lesnar, and honestly, I don't know. I don't know what's next for Brock Lesnar. AJ Styles, the end of his match is perfect because if WWE does go on break, AJ Styles got buried alive to end his match with The Undertaker at WrestleMania, and it was a good match. It was one of Taker's best matches in the last 5 years. But the fact of the matter is, AJ Styles is still here and is still as credible and as gifted as he was before. But what's next for the Phenomenal One? He's done a lot. He's done pretty much everything there is to do in the last 5 years, or 4 years, since coming into WWE. And I think what's next for AJ Styles should be a feud with Drew McIntyre for the WWE title. Unless you bring up somebody from NXT. Either you bring up somebody from NXT and you want them to prove themselves against AJ, or if you do what I said and you move the New Day to Raw, then you could do that trio feud with the New Day, but against the OC instead. And I mentioned Daniel Bryan earlier and Drew Gulak earlier with Braun Strowman. And in my opinion, if you could have Daniel eventually feud with Braun Strowman, if you move Kofi and the New Day to Raw, Daniel could get the first feud with Braun Strowman. If not, and you want to keep, the New Day on SmackDown, then why can't Daniel Bryan and Drew Gulak start teaming together and go for the tag team titles? Give a fresh tag team the opportunity to be tag team champions. And really show that Daniel is mentoring Drew Gulak. I think that would be perfect. As far as the women's division, since that's the only one I haven't talked about, I talked about the tag team division, I talked about the top, top stars. Becky, in my opinion, probably should have lost because it would have given the opportunity for the post WrestleMania to be for them to have the opportunity to start fresh in the post WrestleMania, WWE. But what the fact of the matter is, they didn't do that. So you have to take what they gave, and what they gave was Becky is women's champion still, and Charlotte won the NXT women's title. And Bayley is still the SmackDown women's champion. So the three women that held it, the two women that held the main roster titles going into WrestleMania are the champions leaving WrestleMania. Do I agree with that? I agree with SmackDown more because I feel like they did more to set up what's going to happen after, with tension between Sasha and Bayley. But where does Becky go from here? Now that she beats Shayna. And much like Brock Lesnar, I don't know what's next for Becky Lynch, because I don't know who Becky has left to beat, which is the reason why Becky should have lost, in my opinion. As far as Charlotte beating Rhea Ripley to win the NXT title, I think it would have meant more for Rhea Ripley to beat Charlotte, but I understand why they put Charlotte down in NXT. It's not because they're afraid of ratings, it's because they want the person that beats Charlotte to be established before they get to the main roster, because they have the claim to fame that they beat Charlotte for the NXT Women's title. I understand it 100%. Was it necessary? No. Again, I think Rhea Ripley should have won. So the only one that I don't disagree with is Bayley, because Bayley needed that kick in the pants or kick in the butt to show that she belongs, and that she, the shot in the arm to help her heel reign, heel run as champion. Because in actuality, I could be wrong, but I think Bayley might be pushing up on a year soon as champion, and she needed just a little bit of a punch in the arm to get there, and I feel like WrestleMania did that for her. As far as NXT is concerned, there's going to be an interesting dynamic with Charlotte holding the title now. Is it possible Rhea Ripley takes Charlotte's spot on the main roster? I would say yes, it's possible. It's possible. Because also this could be their way of giving Charlotte a break from the main roster, and that's why they gave Charlotte the NXT title. But as far as everything else is concerned, it's all up in the air as far as I'm concerned, because TakeOver got canceled. Because the WrestleMania TakeOver got canceled and they weren't able to do it, everything is up in the air, because I feel like a lot would have changed at that WrestleMania, at that takeover, at WrestleMania's TakeOver, if they had the opportunity to do it. Because, again, Gargano versus Ciampa got canceled. But I feel like a lot of things would have changed, and we would have been looking at a different NXT after NXT TakeOver, if NXT TakeOver would have happened. So it's a little bit of an interesting dynamic now, because we need the next big show to know exactly who's going to be sticking around in NXT, who's coming up to the main roster, what's happening in NXT. But until that happens, we don't know. So NXT, much like Becky Lynch and Brock Lesnar, are a question mark. But now I leave the question to you. What do you think is going to happen in WWE for the rest of the year? Do you think WWE actually has a long-term plan? Or do you think WWE is going to be booking week to week like they always do? And if you were a part of WWE, how would you take advantage of a break? Would the first thing you say, or first thing you do, be a long-term plan? Let me know down in the comment section below. If you don't want to leave a comment, feel free to leave a like, subscribe to the channel for more content just like this that you can only find right here at Wrestling Express. Before you go, don't forget to ding down the notification bell to always know when a new video is up on the channel and any other activity that might be happening. Till next time.